All the resources today and the slides and all the models and the detailed models are not going to be shown today are available for freely for you to use. I'll send a link out in the text later on about where the resources are. So, important thing because it's an advocacy project, you can use the materials for any purposes and share them. You can use them in tutoring. You can present what I'm presenting here today in any way you want to. If you need support with that, just reach out as well. Okay. I think also I wanted to say I'll be available here with Eugene afterwards for about 10-15 minutes. So if you want to have a chat, especially if you're interested in applying it into your tutoring scope and curricula, etc., please stay on and do that. Otherwise, obviously, we can also talk about it offline as well. I won't be able to necessarily, it depends on how many questions we get. I might not be able to answer all everyone's questions today or comments. If you could just leave it in the text box anyway, then I will collate that afterwards and build up a sort of FAQ around it as well. Okay. Thanks for yeah, thanks for the encouragement there as well about the course and material. But it's good to get some voices now to connect, being a trainer, distinct resources. Some people are doing decolonization work, deeper work on that. Language is very important, embedded in as well. Counselling tutor, and there are many people here that are on that journey already. Great to hear. Holistic approaches, action groups, great diversity of people. I'm really grateful for this many people turning out. I hope it's what's the word? It's going to be worthwhile you investing in that time. Okay, I think that's the preliminaries over. I'm going to now present the solution. I'm going to go into a bit of a sales mode with this, so I hope you don't mind that because this is an advocacy project. So it may sound a bit strange if you're not used to that, me talking that way, but it is going to be a bit sort of direct and salesy as well. Okay. Okay, so what is the wholeness solution? That's the main thing to get across today, what it's all about, what is the rationale for it, and also then how do we actually do it? This is a solution. This is not about talking points of a problem. This is about being solution focused. So where do we come from with the wholeness solution? It is a strategy. It is a strategy that's important to know. It's not just a framework or a model. It's a strategy. It's a drop in the ocean, the metaphor here, to inject something at the ground of therapy, at the very start of it, that can lead us to a more whole, a more healthy situation within training, within practice, supervision, and so on. It enhances our consciousness and ability to be accessible. It is also not a radical approach at all. It's quite obvious in some ways, but it needs thinking about. And it's aligned to the scope ed mapping that we have at the moment. So it's not something different to what we have. It's a way of aligning ourselves. Because as you know, scope ed, some of you, whether you like it or you don't, it does have requirements for embedding context, embedding culture, embedding equity. There's whole programs around BACP, EDI accreditation into courses and so on. So it's very much aligned to reality of requirements as well. But the way I connect the wholeness solution is that it's a small idea, but a big idea. So it's a ripple effect, and I connect it to the wider understanding of the world and planet we live in. So the sphere of consciousness and understanding ourselves within that, and understand the world within that as well. Okay, so it's a wider It's a wider strategy for that, and it requires work, it requires repair and growth as well. So I'm going to outline 5 easy steps for wholeness of that. But first of all, we need to understand the solution, we need to understand clearly where we are today. Without understanding where we are today, where we came from historically, we can't really understand where we need to get to, what the solution needs to be. So the way I'm framing this is that we have a history of the 3 primary schools of psychotherapy: humanistic, psychodynamic, and psychoanalytical, sorry, not psychoanalytic, CBT, cognitive behavioral. So these have set the history of the history of our knowledge and the ways of doing and the culture that we're in. And as you probably realize, a lot of that initial framing of theory was around locating difficulties within the individual rather than the social or personal context, family systems, and so on. And therefore, it represents a sort of decontextual idea of universalism, that everyone can fit into this frame of theoretical understanding. The issue, as I understand that, is that over time that's replicated and enculturated into institutions, into knowledge, subjects, and eventually into client practice, that idea. And this has been fixed, hasn't it? Because in a sense, we have this idea of secondary add-on knowledge and practices. Okay. So secondary add-on knowledge and practices represent things like trauma and stress, embodiment, difference and diversity, culture, and so on. So what this is trying to say is that we have a decontextualized approach on the left-hand side and a contextualized approach on the right-hand side. Okay. And the subjects that are then developed from there are in the image of the base knowledge that you have. So when we come to talk about eating disorders, substance abuse, whatever the subject is, a CSA, for example, we are basing that development on the foundational baseline of mainstream knowledge. And similarly, on the secondary knowledge stuff around culture and difference, we are basing then those same subjects on the cultural aspects of knowledge and the secondary approaches. So there's a sort of split that goes on. So the issue then is there is a barrier between the primary and secondary approaches. From a strategic level, these are deemed as add-ons, a diversity course, a separate subject, a separate understanding of people. So that excludes then the context, the knowledge, and lived experiences within the primary mainstream area and domain. So this sets up for a very splitting kind of position, because within this construct, we are almost highlighting there's something called people A over here on the primary side, and there's people B over there on the secondary side. That sets us up for splitting and exclusion and segregation of knowledge and ideas between the two. And as you probably know, as I'm going to say, there's no such thing as people A and people B, because we're all people, and we just have different contexts within that. So therefore, that's the problem the wholeness solution is trying to resolve. Okay. So I'm not going to go into what classes are secondary ideas and practices, but these are some of those things on the right-hand side. And this is like the shopping list. The shopping list of the solution at the architectural level, what is that going to resolve? Some of these aren't necessarily related to difference and diversity, are they? When we talk about embodiment, the body itself, the mind body, we talk about worldviews, religion and spirituality, perhaps, and ultimate beliefs of individuals. This is not necessarily, well, there's diversity within it, of course, but it is actually topics that we don't normally cover, which are very important to have in the baseline. And neurodiversity being another one, and also how to embed EDI and accessibility into all our practices when we go out to uh, see clients as well. So there's a big shopping list, isn't there? How do we deal with this? Because actually, that's a quite a lot of nuance and moving parts. So how do we overcome this complexity in a way, on a level 4 course, on a level 5 course? Okay, so this is the architecture of that. So over time, the wholeness solution is designed to bring those basics, fundamental practices from secondary areas into the whole to reduce fragmentation over time. So over time, as we develop our curriculums, teaching and supervision practices, we bring it in as a standard without having to refer to it as an add-on, as a normal part of working. So over time, then we'll achieve a standard helping baseline where there is no barrier, there is no segregation, and actually there's a sort of blueprint at the foundational level by which we then approach other subjects. The example of addiction and sexuality and all that stuff, they're all available to us from a standard baseline, rather than as separate subjects which either have the mainstream baseline decontextualized or the secondary baseline, which is more cultural, let's say. Yeah. So that's the architecture. That's what we need to get to. So the wholeness solution isn't just a framework and model. Okay, it's important to note. It's more than just a framework and model. It's based on the framework and model, but at the heart of it is an advocacy model. It's a certain strategy to developing more wholeness, more cultural health, a stronger profession, and more equity in the profession. Okay, so it's not just the model itself. So it encompasses a transition plan for ourselves as individuals in the curriculum. It models a whole foundational curriculum as represented in the book, a new introduction to counselling. It introduces systematic method of embedding context, not just a let's just try a bit of this, and maybe put a bit of intersectionality there, a bit of this here, and a bit of this here. It's a bit more assessment focused. It's more sort of like this is a tool that we can use to check ourselves in the work we do, whether we're presenting on grief or whatever it is. And also it's a pedagogy, it's a method of teaching. So how do you embed in an accessible, easy way into the day one experience of students? What does that approach look like? Where it doesn't interfere with any modality, it doesn't interfere too much with the curriculum and the planning as well. So these are things that have been thought about within this model. But to do this work, we need more and more tutors, especially. We need more communities and practitioners to come forward and advocate. I know people are doing good work already. Even that is good to know about it, so that we know people who are engaging in a 100% embedded approach, not an add-on approach or a separate subject only, at a level 4, level 5 onwards. So we need people to do this work. We need other institutions. So far, we have a course that is coming online as a diploma course, which will be using the whole approach, which is a new course. But we also have tutors within various organizations who are using it actively. So if you are using it, I'd really like to know, because we need that social, proof that some things are happening, whether this is actually going to fly or not. So we need to know that to do this work. Also, I wanted to point out this is in the resources section. I'll send a link in. There is a guidance document for provision, design, and delivery of training. That is a 25-point guidance for self-assessment for training providers, a training program, or even people that provide training on behalf of others, CPDs and so on. So it'd be really great if you started having a look at that, feeding back, reviewing it. These are the things I like, this is I don't like this, all that stuff, because we need to develop the community approach. So I talked about the book, but now I'm going to step into the solution. So if you have any questions about that rationale, this is the time probably to put them into the text box as well, and we'll come back to it after I've done the first step. Okay, so although there are 5 steps, there's actually only one step. And I'll explain why that is. There's only one step, and it's very simple. We need to do differently to change this. First step, change the view of who you are. Our current universal mainstream models are based on this type of model, that we have experiences over time and that we have experiences that reflect our inner experiences, maybe body image, whatever it is, and our relationships as well, family relationships, work relationships, and so on. That's great. That's great. But there's issues with that. If that's the embedded day one approach, that can't be right. Because this excludes a fuller understanding of experience in context. By excluding context and making it invisible or implicit rather than explicit, it replicates into the professional culture and the way and the systems that we are adhering to. Thirdly, if someone sees that as the baseline model, whether it's formal, informal, and fairy, it constricts the whole population because it constricts those contexts coming up in lived experiences from day one. Where am I in this model? Am I represented in this model? Can I speak about my difference? Can I speak about male gender, as an example? Can I have a voice in all my different contexts, all different parts of me? Yeah. What are the barriers and needs of an individual are not represented here? Knowledge is not represented here. So therefore, it fragments understanding. So this is the fragmented approach I was talking about, which is that this is actually now sets us up for fragmentation and segregation already. Because that understanding is left to later add-ons, adaptations, and so on, which is not necessary at the baseline. So I'm talking about the baseline here. I'm not talking about additional subjects. We still have additional subjects. The foundation of our starting point of self-development, relationships, and so on. So this is the issue. Where is your gender here? Where is your belief systems? Where is your culture? Where is your family and system? Where is the structure? Where's the planet? Where's the Earth on this? So therefore, it's a it's a it's not a complete model because it's not in our face. We may argue that actually it's implicit, it's a baseline, it's a basic, but it's not there, is it? It's not it doesn't express anything more than we have our feelings and thoughts and feelings and behaviors and experiences of relationships. So that is the issue. So what is the answer? The answer is to just take the same model and contextualize it. This is the WICIT model. WICIT just stands for the categories of context. Okay. So I want to highlight this is the same model. There is a second level of detail. So you can actually there's a second level of more details, about 60 items that formulated this model, taken from secondary ideas. A key transition from the other model to this model is the basic understanding that the secondary approaches are formative of the self. In other words, When we talk about embodiment, everyone's got a body. When we talk about neurodiversity, everyone's got neurodiversity. Everyone's got a race. You get the idea now. But a belief system, everyone lives in a culture or a habitat where they live in, whether the neighborhood, the family system, and so on. So therefore, the way this works is that it encapsulates, the model encapsulates everything that's missing at the top level. And that's the key, and it's the only key to the whole approach. Because once you've got that there, then we can talk about um, the gaps being encapsulated there. It represents the secondary position in the model itself. What doesn't it represent? Ask me. You know, gender expression, embodied communication styles. That's the embodiment aspect of it. Stress and trauma, intergenerational history. That's the time aspect of it. So what this model is saying simply is that our day-to-day experiences over time are formative of these contexts as well. So this then makes whole. By starting from this position in our education, it makes whole. We don't need to add on because we will develop ourselves through the model, through our dialogues, through the lived experiences, through talking about access and barriers. Okay. So that is what, when I said this is simple, that's what it is. It's simple. You don't need the rest of the 5 steps, 4 steps, because if you start with that, everything gets done. Your relationships get done. Your skills get done. Your self-development gets done. Everything's finished. That's what I'm saying. This is simple. We don't need anything else. We're overcomplicating it from day one. So to actually finish the model off, there is a bit more to it which we layer on top. Okay. To consider this, we need to consider normativity and difference. So each of those contexts can have both normativity aspects of them and different aspects of them. Obviously, when we're talking about intersectionality and social groups or personal groups and roles and things like that, these can all be classed as normative or different in different contexts. And then we need to add in opportunities and barriers because that completes the model. And then we can include privilege and marginalization as well, dynamics. So this is the whole model of the self. This is what we should be using. This is what we should be introducing to students on day one. Okay. So that is the answer. It's as simple as that. And I'll stop after this slide because this is the most important bit now. So what does the method of teaching look like? I think I've already alluded to it. Day one means from today onwards, we have to use this model or an equivalent. We can't not use the model because if we do, we're always going to go back to fragmentation and mainstream decontextualized practices. We won't be able to help ourselves because there'll be a gravitational shift towards the universal. So it has to be on day one with students. So the tutors and some of those tutors we're working with now and the course that we're developing, the diploma course, is going to be their day one exercise. What does that look like on day one? Self-reference exploration. We don't talk about other people's context. We don't talk about other people's identities or beliefs. We talk about ourselves in that model. We find ourselves in that model through the words context, through difference in normativity, privilege and marginalization, barriers and opportunities. Third, that is what embeds context into the self. That's what leads to embedded whole practice. Because we embed difference, diversity, equity, normativity, social and personal context from day one because we understand ourselves from it. We develop ourselves from it. We understand our worldviews, what we like, what we don't like, what we politics if you like. Once that's done, number four is continuation across study and practice, including supervision. In other words, it's there, it's a tool. One organization, Caspari organization, maybe here as well, they introduced this on day one. They put it onto the as a poster in the classroom, and they have it in their worksheets as a reference model. They
Thanks,
just they
Kosh.
they simply use it during the training. And number five, by using that model, as you can see, it contains the words access and accessibility and barriers and opportunities. You're ready for practice because then there's consciousness being created of some people have these barriers, childcare. Some people have barriers because of knowledge, because of inclusivity, because of LGBT, race, whatever it is, and intersectionality of it. So they're practice ready through the model as well. They take the model, they learn about themselves through the model, then they're ready to learn about everyone else through the model as well. And then the relationship. How do I stop this? Okay, I'll do some. Okay, I'm going to stop there because that's the main bit done, thankfully for me. How are we doing for time?
Yeah, pretty good. It's 1 o'clock,
We're
so
doing pretty well for
yeah,
time. That's good.
yeah.
I thought I might waffle on a bit more. I think we've got better at sort of cutting it down.
Oh wow, no, you've really done well to, really make it concise. So I do
Yeah,
appreciate that.
brilliant, brilliant. So open up to questions, anything you want, really. Does it make sense? Does it not make sense yet?
If
If
you're
it
going to
doesn't
raise
make sense,
your
I've probably
hand, I'll
failed.
open up the mic for you, or put something into the chat. Yeah, sorry, Stuart Taylor. Do you want to open up your mic then, Stuart?
Prasad, hi, good afternoon. Sorry, Prasad. I just messaged somebody called Prasad. I got his name on my tongue. Mahmood, good afternoon. And
Nice,
thanks for
yeah.
the book. And thanks for this session. There's so many different threads and themes that resonate from what you've written in your book.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to be very, very simple and clear in terms of time today. And I guess the key question that comes to mind is, have you begun, are you already in dialogue with the governance bodies in the psychotherapeutic sector?
Yes.
And if you have, how responsive are they proving to be? And if you haven't, how soon do you anticipate initiating that dialogue as a means by which these principles become, to use one of your terms, normative in all
Normative.
trainings?
Yeah. That's a great question. Thanks for that opening question for that. Yeah, I think I can answer it in two ways. One is what can everybody else do to open those doors to socialize and stuff, but also there is a sort of I'm holding a sort of not being too optimistic but not too negative as well, is that yes, I've had lots of dialogue. We've done NCPS training events, we've done BACP, engaging with the standards people. I've done CP are coming up in March, which are a very big, community. 16,000 students they put through courses in a year. That's a big, big thing if we can get that adopted in there. A few others which I can't. Yeah, so I haven't had engagement yet with BPC or BABCP yet. I haven't got the doors open for that. So if anyone else has, it'd be great. So yes, I think they could. I think I have to wait and see how it evolves. I can't answer yes, or in any way. I'm sort of on a neutral fence perspective, other than to say yes, we're starting to engage and people are starting to take interest and making sure we get all these branches out there and events out there. But it's really going to be down to the people. But we have to recognize the scope ed requirement requires it. We have to keep going back to that. So the question I'd like to ask then, in my sales hat on this, is how are you going to be doing that then? How is that going to be done? Is it going to be another form of add-on, or is it really going to be embedded? So I don't have the answers. I'd like to know what other people can do and help with if they really want to do it, advocate. So does that answer it for now?
In this context, yes, but I think there's an offline conversation to be that's just been sparked.
Yes. Okay. Thanks for that. I've also, one thing, I'm a UKCP as well. I'm involved in some of the conversations with them in training and super. So that's good. So we're ticking the boxes somewhere, but the proof is in the pudding, isn't it, as well?
Okay, thank you, Stuart. I've got a question in the chat, as well as it's so obvious, lots of comments around that. But what does context mean, refer to in the six?
Yes. So
I thought
sorry, I
they're,
did
I
I
thought
did
they're
see
all
that.
contextual.
Yeah, I did see that comment. Yes.
Yeah.
Six. So context is a generic term which I use the context of our experience. The sixth one is the lived context. In other words, the environment we live in, the culture, the nested personal cultural contexts we live in. So basically your family, your community, your work profession, and so on. So the context lived was the sixth one. I will call them all contexts. Worldview is a context for all experience. But lived context is actually your environment, your country, your neighborhood, your government, that your planet. So that's the difference between the sixth context. Hopefully that answers it. Your culture, which obviously
Okay.
changes as we move around.
Okay, thank you. People are asking about how to contact you, but maybe you can
Yeah,
pop
I
that
can
into
do
the
that.
chat or
Plus,
maybe
it'll be on
Stuart
the
as well.
slides as well. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
any further people who want to maybe speak directly? Just looking at some of the comments here. Jocelyn, Joe, do you want to open up your mic and video
Yeah.
potentially?
Hi. Just wanted to say how exciting it is that Barton and TADF are working together on this, because I feel it really does strengthen that partnership. Working is really important. And, I'm still really traveling with and working with these ideas, even though I've done the course and I loved the TADF course. It really was transformative for me and actually very healing and therapeutic, because I'm in higher education and training of psychotherapists and regulation. And I've often really struggled to advocate for a contextual approach and come against a lot of opposition in different areas and resistance. And this has given me the tools and resources that I've needed in order to be more effective in all my communications and all my practice. So I think it's such a valuable tool. And I think even in terms of developmental perspectives, which I'm interested in with children and adults, that the development of self in context, like, for example, autoethnography, thinking about what are the influences on the development of self, not just our biographies, our narratives of our lives, but also what were the contexts and how did they influence our development and sense of self. And I really feel it's brought into awareness a massive missing piece of the puzzle that really helps to integrate in terms of training, education, supervision, practice, wholeness. And I really like the language of wholeness as well. So I just want to say that I'm really happy that this work is happening, and I really hope that people are going to go with it fully, and that we have a job to do to transform our field so it can be safer and more effective and do less harm. Because I think we do inadvertently, through ignorance, through weakness, or our own deliberate faults, do many harms in our field to people without realizing it through our unconsciousness of the context.
Yes.
So
Yes.
thank you, Mahmood, and thank you, Eugene.
Thanks, Joss.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Joe.
Joe. Good to see you as well. Yeah, so that's great encouragement, and the messages are encouraging as well. Thank you very much. And someone's asked what fairies do I draw from for the. It is and it isn't. The main fairy I drew from is trauma, stress, and harm. Simple as that. It's the embodiment. So then, if you have a high level understanding of something causes stress, trauma, and harm, then you have fairies underneath that. So, okay, so acculturation theory, if you know about that, or stress of adaptation and masking. So, therefore, all moral injury and intergenerational trauma. So, all those then, when you talk about secondary, just become embedded into the trauma, stress, trauma, and harm theory. That's the way I would answer it. Yeah. So, even the cultural bit about understanding people's culture falls under that sort of stress, trauma, and harm. What's stressful in the dynamics of an environment. So that's the way I'd like to answer the what did I use. But I drew upon lots, and lots of it's lost in the mind as well. Obviously, I looked through neurodiversity and all the different subjects, and obviously cultural competence as well. But at the heart of it is I like to regard the models as a truism rather than a theory. Who can doubt the fact that we have worldviews? Who can doubt the fact that we have a body with experience? Who can doubt the fact that we live in an environment and a culture? If you can doubt those things and you don't understand that that can influence your experience and your mental health, I'm not coming from it from any fancy theory. I'm coming from it as a pragmatic truism of life. Who can argue that we live in a planet or that there's pollution? Yeah, so this is the basics. It's almost like the basics have been lost, and I don't know why that is. Okay. Yeah, I'd like to think of some people asked about CPD, and perhaps Eugene, we could maybe talk about potential CPD. If people want to do a sort of 1 day sort of deep dive exploration, we could do something like that.
Yeah.
Just give us a message or something like that. And if there's demand, of course, we'll do it. Thanks for the questions. So let me move on then. Is that okay? And
Yeah.
hopefully this will be the easier part, probably for me. Okay, so the second step, as you probably guessed, we have to change the view of the relationship. The current model is inadequate. It's empty. There's got gaps, littered with gaps. This is the current model. I know this is stereotyping a little bit, but this is pretty much the model that we've historically grown up with, let's say. It's the fact that we have experiences of two people. Obviously, it could be group supervision as well then. And there's a relationship with personal dynamics involved in it. Could be defenses, attachments, relational patterns, whatever it is in there that is causing barriers and facilitators of the relationship. There's theory attached to that. And some theories obviously do talk about role power, person-centered, for example. I'm not trying to label any theory. This is harmonious to any theory, what we're doing here. We're not asking for any changes in theory. So the thing about the issue is doesn't explicitly consider the context we talked about, limited relational scope. The relational scope is a word I introduced, which is a very important one that we need to bring into our understanding. It's not just about relational depth. It's not just about under the surface. It's about relational scope as well. Number three is very important. I don't think everyone understands this yet. By excluding other parts of the context into understanding of relationships and self-development, it can be very harmful in shallow empathy because we're out of sync. We don't understand neurodiversity challenges. We don't understand autism. We don't understand language that could be jarring, you know, this sort of thing. We go on and on and on. So contextual empathy is the word I've chosen to say we need to develop our understanding of that so we can be more relational. It's all relational. So to understand the model, which is, you probably can guess it's going to be a relational model, there's three observations I made in developing this model. Firstly is the fact that when we talk about the relationship, we separate that from secondary practices. So when we talk about stress, neurodiversity, religion, spirituality, embodiment, and so on, we talk about that as if they're separate to the relationship. They're not separate to the relationship. They're part of understanding to be able to develop good relationships. An example of that, by understanding that a client can go out of their window of tolerance or stress, wherever it is, and there might be some trigger words that we need to avoid and say, we are then learning about how to develop good relationships, aren't we? So the secondary approaches aren't separate to the relationship, they are intrinsic. Why have we got them as secondary if they're not part of the relationship? One of the key things I've changed in the cultural competency field is that I say to them at the start, this is not about cultural competence. This is about the relationship. We've forgotten the fact that cultural competence needs to be embedded into the relationship, all relationships, not just certain relationships. Second one, we think of, when we talk about it, have you noticed when we talk about relationship, we think about it usually as one thing, as a whole, the relationship. I've got a reasonable relationship with my client. The relationship seems to be good. It's not so good. The relationship's a bit jarring. We're in that state. But actually, that's wrong as well, because the relationship is a multiplicity of relationships. It's not a singular relationship. We need to change that to be able to do this work. The neurodiversity relationship could be very different. The gender relationship can be very different. The belief system and ideology relationship could be very different. Just because you've got trust in one area doesn't mean you've got trust in other. So therefore, as a therapist, we are then becoming a barrier if we don't think about relationships in the context that we talked about as, experience to experience, identity to identity, belief to belief, embodiment to embodiment even. That's an important relationship. So we need to think about it in the broader terms. Other fact of the matter is we talk about relationships. I know this is not deliberate, but it's implicit in the way we talk about relationships. We talk about it as if it doesn't require knowledge. That if we are good human beings, we understand ourselves, our feelings, that's great. We can create good relationships by being empathic, developing rapport, which is great. There's not wrong with that. But as I said before, you need knowledge to be able to develop more attunement to the relationship. It's very much related to the first one. An example I gave before was that inclusive language is an example of knowledge to build relationships, to understand that there are things that might jar a client because of who I am, what I say, is part of that knowledge that we gain before we see clients. Embodied knowledge is important as well. Why are we feeling anxiety? So therefore, relationships arise from understanding our experience in context. And this is really important. This is where the attunement of the relationship comes in. So we're not out of sync, we're more in sync. This is where we're able to then respond more empathically because we are attuned to the fact that, oh, that could be a word that you don't want to say here because it might trigger panic. Do you see where I'm coming from? So that improves the interventions, it improves the responses, it improves the interventions, the protocols. But also then, this is not just about the relationship, it's about helping the client then to explore their context. Yeah. To be able to ask questions that we may feel appropriate around someone's belief, identity, family system. So therefore, by framing the relationship in this way, not only is it an elegant, easy to solution, it actually gives rise to the ideas of what skills do I need to be able to help the client explore aspects of their context. How would someone raise a question to a client about context if they've never explored that within themselves or others? So it gives us the vehicle then to enable the process to work, to enable more, help the client feel relaxed, but also to actually help come up with responses that can focus in on certain aspects that might be helpful to the client while still being client directed. We're not taking over the client's autonomy here. Therefore, we need to increase the relational scope. So this is a bit of a clumsy diagram, but I try to just show the fact that, you know, the relational scope is a dimension of the relationship. You know, have we got the scope correct? You know, is the client ready to talk about race, gender, and class? Is that what's blocking the relationship? Is it because they believe you're not going to agree with religious beliefs, for example? So therefore, those are the relationships parts that could be very important to unfreeze, to help unfreeze. But that comes through trust, of course. So therefore, the answer to the question of what is the new relational model is quite simple as well then. Because we've already said that we're going to expand the relational context, the relational scope. So in the middle then, what you get then is here is that this is this relational scope, not just this. Furthermore, the dynamics within the relationship are personal and contextual dynamics. Body to body, identity to identity, time to time, knowledge to knowledge, context to context. Okay. This is very broad statements, but the idea I hope you appreciate that these dynamics of the relationship need to blend with the contextual as well. So therefore, Wicket is embedded into the relationship. And those dynamics, we need to make explicit, those dynamics are influenced and mediated by power dynamics, societal dynamics, cultural dynamics, similarity and difference. Similarity is often missed. Similarity can be facilitated, it can actually be a negative in some cases as well. And importantly, we need to focus in on communication and the meaning relationship because someone mentioned about language. But this is generic. It's not just about differences in language and styles of communicating. It's also about meaning. Do we understand the real meaning of what someone? Do you actually understand the meaning of what I'm saying? Maybe you don't, which is okay. It's just the difference. Maybe it's my pacing. Do you see what I'm saying? So when it comes to the key thing about embedding neurodiversity, this is where it's embedded. And also ethnic and communication styles. It's for everyone. It's not just for. So this is where I avoid using particular group names because I'm saying this is for everyone. This is not just for neurodivergent people or people with different languages. This is for everyone to, okay, that's that's a generic embedded aspect of self-development, understanding ourselves. What is our own communication style? Yeah, it's that sort of thing. Therefore, this is what I'm saying here. This is mandatory part of embedded whole brain approach. You can't if a student has the other model in hand, that's not a complete picture of what they need to learn about in the relationship. So it's mandatory. So this model then also then expands the relational scope, then invites students to say, I want to talk about this aspect of myself. And then it sort of unfreezes that to actually say, this is important to me. It's not just a universal model. I'm allowed to talk about this part of my relationship. And importantly, as you probably guessed it, because it's a relationship, it's embedded in the relationship. So therefore, it retains the modality theory as is. It's practice-based, developmental-based. There are some things in theory in the book. There's a chapter on theory just to highlight some of the things we need to think about to be reflexive on theory. But the good thing about it is that it's very little disruption because we already do relationships. So there's very little cost to that doing that in that sense. Okay. And that's the important point. I'm not asking for any change of the current curriculum in a fundamental way. Okay, so the third one, let me just check up on time. Yeah, we're doing well. Okay, so the first step then is now the process. I talked about a systematic way of embedding and keeping an eye on the fact that we are considerate of context within whatever subject we decide to talk about, whether it's shame, whether it's addictions, eating disorders, whether we're talking generically about reflectiveness and so on, or grief or whatever it is. So what this is saying is that on the left-hand side, that wicket model, we just use that as a tool when we think about subjects. So if you're developing some training about shame, for example, you can bring these ideas in. You can bring in what about different cultures? What about our culture? What about this type of difference? What about worldviews? What about identity? How does that reflect back into the subject that I'm talking about? It's not always needed, but it's a sort of self-reflection going back into that. So we don't end up with a universal, this applies to everyone, but there can be differences that apply to different people. So that's the process. So the book itself is based on this model. So the book takes the baseline of helping. There's all fundamentals in there, skills, self-development, and so on. And it uses the wicket model to make sure that it's good enough. The embedded aspect of it is good enough in the model. And there's a process then that we all need to just hold on to that embedded approach so that when we do our own tutoring, our own supervision, we are considerate of this. So a lot of people now have come back and said they're using this in supervision, tutoring, and so on. So it helps it helps as a reference point. But the thing is, it's not splitting. It's not splitting you into people A and B. It's for everyone to use. Even if there was no diversity, you still need this. Yeah. And obviously there can never be no diversity because there's always diversity. Everything's diverse anyway. But you get the idea that actually you would need to know about worldviews. You would need to know about context and lived culture. You would need that reference point anyway. So don't do it for a particular group. Don't do it for a marginalized group. Do it for us. Do it for everybody. Okay, so I'm not going to go into this example, but this was just me. This is something I introduced as a sort of example to say, if you were doing a bit of training on grief, for example, how the model can be used to ask questions about how you're teaching and thinking about grief. Yeah, so worldview, for example, how does that influence meaning of loss? Simple question, isn't it? Simple thing. You may not think about it. Identity, what the expectations for a particular identity, like a gender, for example, in grief. And also, for example, non-normative, let's say, relationships, like with pets, with like step parents and blended families. Why those relationships can be degraded because they're not expected to be as important as the kinship or the blood relationships. So this is just a way of using that model then as a reference point to say that. So in the guidance about training, it talks about um, one aspect. One of the guidance says something like how we consider different positionalities of wicket in developing our case studies. Yeah. So you take the wicket model, case studies, person A profile, person B profile, person C profile, rather than focusing just on the person A profile when there's no such thing as person A anyway. So that's an example of where this is really necessary for the guidance. You can't do the guidance without the model. Otherwise, it becomes a bit woolly. It becomes too woolly or too prescriptive, and there's gaps can be left. Okay, so I may as well finish this, then we can have a longer reflection and Q&A perhaps. Step 4, we need to connect our practice to the wider consciousness of context, whether it's lived or personal. So we embed within ourselves the context within understanding of clients, conceptualization, and practice. Practice/organization. In the book, if you read it, I talk about practice as being, so even if you're a single person in private practice, you are an organization and you provide a service. And that reframes it to, so if I deliver the service, who will be included in it, more likely to be included or excluded from my service? So it pays attention to that. Now it says, okay, obvious example, disability. So it provides a sort of framing for let's become conscious first. Not necessarily that we can do stuff, but because we understand barriers and opportunities from the start of education, we're able to connect more with the implications of that, even if it's not no action, because we can't do everything as an individual. So who individually and collectively we might be able to serve, who might be advantaged or disadvantaged. A key exercise. In the book, there are a couple of exercises to help that process. Okay. So in the material, this is not just about the relationship and the practice and the supervision. This is about organizational integration. So the work so far within organizations, I'm focused more on cultural shifts. I'm not interested in systemic structural change personally because the cultural bit I believe has to come first. Without the cultural change, I don't think anything can change personally. If it does change, it's not saying it's not needed, but I think this is the part that of the relationship we need to get right, change the culture in the organization. So there's a 4-step approach for organizational integration. This will be in the slides, you'll get this. First is we need to adopt the relational model within the organization itself, number 1. If that's not available, I know I'm being exaggerating, forget it. From my personal perspective, forget it. Because it's going to be very haphazard, add-on, it's going to be very hit and miss. It's going to create a lot of tensions within relationships and in the organization and so on, because we can't do it as a separate EDI project. There's no point. I'm exaggerating, of course, but in the way I've described it, there's no point. So the second part is embed it into the practices. So practice of teaching and so on. This is what I've talked about. That's what the book is about. That's what today is about. The curriculum, the learning assessment. How do you embed that? Because then it comes to assessment as well. From a delivery and practice organization, number 3, that's where the culture has to change. That's where the guidance comes into that document and training. But it also has to embed into functions like marketing, imagery, HR, conferences, the environment or spaces that are occupied, and the service design. So when we design services for clients or members as membership in membership bodies, they are attuned to the culture that's already embedded into the organization. You cannot create equitable and strong services if the organization is not up to that level. Does that make sense? So if the organization itself hasn't got the consciousness of that, the services are going to be a mirror of that. They're going to be haphazard. They're not going to be, they might be jarring for some communities and so on because the cultural bit isn't strong enough to sustain an understanding of what that's like in the services they develop. You can only develop a service, any service, as long as you are proficient in developing the service. You can't just leave it. You can't just hope for the best. Now, if you're building a building, you have to be able to be proficient at building the building to be able to deliver that building. So if we want a stronger and equitable profession, you've got to be good at that part of it to be able to develop the services that are good and strong in the first place. So then number 4 is you embed them into the service. In other words, if it's client work, it's going to be the environment, it's going to be the contracting, it's in the adjustments of relationship, understanding relational styles, it's all that stuff that's already embedded in the model. Because you understand the model, you then can drop some of the assumptions around it. Okay. Oh, okay, so the last step, then number 5 is advocacy, is that we could consume this individually, but actually, what do we do about it now? I can't do this with just a few people's help. And this is the call to action bit. If you believe in this, we need people to say, yeah, I want to help with this. Either a little bit or a bit more, whatever you can do for that. Because just as the embedded approach requires cultural change, so too do we need a cultural change to use the model and the framework itself. We need to get to a sort of 20%, 30%, 40% usage. So therefore, the question I'll ask, open this up for you, have I made the case for this, for what we're doing here? I hope it will come across as an accessible, easy implementation approach. It is a test of how ready we are as a profession to really do this work, or do we really believe in this? Because it's such a simple change. So I'm going to be really interested in seeing what can be blocked with something that is so simple. Okay, so this is open discussion really. Who can we come forward? What are your suggestions? I know some people have already said that they can build contacts. That's great, and that's where I am going to end it for now. And hopefully we've got enough time for reflections, questions, and so on. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Yes, we do have 20 minutes, and then I think you want to offer some time after that for those individuals who maybe want to talk to you personally. Wow, okay, there's so much there. We're going to have to re-watch the video. But if anyone has any thoughts, questions, or ways of promoting this model, anything like that, please put your digital hand up. And of course, if you want to write in the question chat as well, please feel free to do that. But I just had a thought actually I was going through because in many ways this is quite simple and logical. I mean, it's not, you don't have to apply your brain too much to the overall concept of it. And it's not just about cultural competence, but there is power and there's exceptionalism to encounter in the world, isn't it? There's that sort of barrier. And one of the things I was thinking about, I mean, you talked about worldviews, and there are a myriad of worldviews out there. And a part of my thinking as I was thinking about this is, oh, there's so much to know.
Yeah.
There's so many worldviews, there's so many stuff, and it's only going to get bigger, it feels like anyway. I mean, what would you say about that push? It feels like it's like, wow, that's so much. It's so simple, yet so much.
Yeah, yeah.
How to engage with
Address.
that kind of particular uh, um, hindrance,
Yeah,
for want of a better word. Yeah.
yeah. And that's a great question. So I can answer it in terms of the second level basically can contain subcategories, really.
Mm,
So it's not a case, just as in cultural competence, we know that we can't know everything
mm,
about a particular subject, particular group, and so on. But there are certain ideas that may help us to engage a particular topic, whether it's political, whatever it is. So yeah, there is a limit to that. Certainly, I think the model is asking for therapists to reflect on themselves as the point of reference and to learn from themselves in some ways to
mm.
then go, okay, there's some differences with their clients and stuff like that.
Yes.
So that's a big part of it. It's not it's not going to be infinite amount of knowledge seeking. There is a second level model which I haven't put up on this on the thing, but under worldview, I think I talk about political worldviews. I talk about yeah, ultimate beliefs as a worldview. So I've got that, but there's only 5 or 6 categories on it
Mm,
in the worldview section, and there could be more, of course. But I would say that it's a starting point. We can't know everything about the client, and we should drop that knowledge anyway because it's client centered. But yeah, so that's what I would say. Keep it simple, keep it dialogical, and just learn a little bit about those 4 or 5 categories, including ourselves. And hopefully, if students are talking to each other, they'll be able to speak on their own from their own perspectives as well. So that's the way I would answer that particular point at the
mm,
moment.
mm,
Yeah. So I understand, appreciate what you're saying, but overwhelm, simple, overwhelm. Got to keep that balance.
mm, mm.
Yeah.
And the reflection on self is a sort of key
Yeah.
part of that, isn't it? Because
Yeah. Another thing to note would be then bring in some case studies. So then
yeah,
I had a client who had this worldview and this came jarring. We had this, how did we build that? Was it successful? Was it not successful? Another worldview, obviously, we have different ideologies about politics, and we have to accept the fact that that exists. So we have to then be prepared for those differences to come up, our
mm,
boundaries, our acceptance of that, and knowing what to do in those scenarios. So I'm not going to go into deep like
mm,
worldviews. Every single one you've got to learn about, but just like a few ones that seem to come up a lot when
mm.
experiences that can come up, or they might be useful.
Yes, or in fact that I have a worldview. It's not just others who have worldviews. That tends
Yeah,
to be the
yeah.
starting position, isn't it? I don't have a worldview, but
Yeah,
everyone
exactly.
else does.
And
And
that so
yeah,
we've got to frame those. It's our
yeah,
language we're using, but it's not client centered
yeah,
necessarily.
yeah.
We won't go to client. What's your worldview on next? I mean, that's a good point because that comes into a question being asked of asking the client about
Mm,
uh, educating me. We shouldn't ask the client to educate us, and that's why we do this work initially to frame. For example, recently I wrote about on LinkedIn about when people don't understand the difference between individualism and collectivism. These are fundamental things. These are fundamental frames, of just systems and so on.
mm,
Yeah, so we don't want to educate. We need to learn something, but also drop that as well in client center. That goes into the background. Um, so we're not asked. So this model, I haven't said anything about asking.
mm.
I haven't gone to the skills. That's in the book a little bit, yeah, but that's to be client centered. The model is the model. It's the developmental. It's the curriculum. I haven't actually been prescriptive of you must ask clients X or you must say this or and so on. So the background knowledges hopefully will give you that ability to attune to clients and know when to ask and when it could be appropriate to ask something. Yeah,
Yeah,
so that's a whole day's work in itself of training and so on. But that the hope is then that comes through the curriculum, doesn't it? Yeah,
mm.
So yeah, so that's the balance. Meeting in the middle is a good phrase I like to use. Um, Similar with neurodivergent client, you can't know everything about.
Mm.
You shouldn't know everything about client anyway, because actually that's client-centered. But you need to have some understanding of potential. So that if the client then talks about a particular aspect of their identity, at least you have some frames of understanding of where the clients come from. I talk about this idea of empathic lag in the book, that there is a loss if we don't have a certain amount of understanding beforehand with
Mm.
clients. Um, yeah, and that applies to race, gender, class, mind-body differences as well. I think that's becoming established now that people are recognizing that's not without self-development. It's not without knowledge, awareness, and embodiment now. I think people are hopefully getting that idea that you can't just turn up and
Mm.
it can work sometimes, but I'm not saying as a baseline of development, we need that as per your race conversation because it's a lot in there.
Mm. 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 So that's really good to highlight, isn't it? This idea of this balance, and I mean, because I think there is this kind of visceral feeling, isn't it, with being overrun by knowledge or overrun by people coming into the country, or overrun by immigration. This idea of being flooded by stuff, and I think there's a fundamental barrier here, isn't it, to engaging. Don't have to be flooded. Was what you're saying. There are some basic kind of worldviews
Yeah,
to sort of really have a sense of
yeah,
them, really, more than anything. And then each person you encounter
exactly.
will have some relationship with that in terms of your worldview.
Yeah,
Um, and sort of carrying all of these ideas quite lightly at the same time, but very
lightly.
seriously as well. And
Yeah,
so that it's fundamental struggle, which I have and people have, I know.
yeah.
But
When can
essentially, it's
knowledge
quite
become
simple.
when can knowledge become a hindrance as well,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, we've got a few more minutes. So I don't know if people want to put their digital hand up, or if there's any other questions you've noticed there, Mahmood.
There's quite a few comments there, isn't there, in the text box?
There is,
People,
yes.
I,
Someone's
I,
been
I
trying.
will take them away and answer
Yeah.
them as well if we can't get them today. Anyone
Yeah.
want
So
to
we
come on
will.
and ask a question or anything or say something maybe?
Well,
Yeah, great. Some people are sitting on accreditation committees. That'd be grateful. There's no activism required for this work. This is about truism. This is about an obvious gap. If people can't see the obvious gap, I like to know why people feel there's a gap in the model. Why do they feel that that's a wrong thing to talk about? Um, it's basically it's going to be advocating for what we already have. So I'm not changing anything other than asking them to augment an expanded scope of the relationship and the self, in essence, and take it from there, see what happens from there.
there's many comments of appreciation.
See you guys in a minute.
I think Philip had his hand up.
Yeah. Oh, Philip. Yes. Please.
Oh, it's just started raining. Lovely.
Oh,
There he is.
hi, hi, Philip. Good to
Uh,
see you.
I'm just wondering, of the kind of the six areas,
Yeah,
if they're all kind of aspects of relationship, or you can have a relationship within each of those areas. Whether you always think that you incorporate all six within
yeah,
work, or whether
yeah,
sometimes
exactly.
it's sort of more prominent than another.
Yeah, yeah. That's exactly right, isn't it? It's just like if you look at that as a sort of you're reflecting on your client, you take, okay, what might I have missed? Have a look at that. Not relevant to talk about worldview, not to maybe more relevant to talk about the environment they live in. Social determinants of health, for example, might be relevant to what's caused them stress and mental health issues. And then you might go, okay, maybe there's a difference of knowledge and spirituality, for example, that may be relevant. But they may be just in the things in the back of the mind. We're not talking about practice. We're just talking about reflection yet. Not talking about actual work. Yes, I agree with what you're saying, just to have that model. There is a second level. So hopefully the first model, when you look at the second model, then you go, oh, there's 6 in those, there's 6 in those, and 5 in those. Okay. That will give you confidence, actually. It's not an infinite list of items under each. I have thought about that. So I think there's probably about 40, 50. I haven't counted them for a long time. So things like communication style will come under embodiment, relational patterns will come under embodiment, and gender expression and things like that. Oh, sensory things, for example, come under that. So there's a sort of, it just gives you a reference point to think about it. As you said, Philip, they're not all going to be relevant. They're going to be just like you scan that and say, okay, what's relevant could be relevant. And the important thing isn't even about the client work. It's about, as I think everyone will probably agree, it's about our self-development. It's our ability to understand the world, ourselves in the context, power dynamics, similarities, and so on. So that's where I'm coming from. That not prescribing the actual. That's for the school. That's for the diploma course. That's for them to figure out how they're going to attune their skills, their development to it.
Thank you.
Is that okay for now?
Thank you, Philip. Also got Julie. So I'll just pop her on. If you want to unmute yourself.
Yeah. I'm totally agreeing with everything you're saying. So I'm not saying this as anything different, but just that what's really struck me, Mahmood, about what you're saying is that the importance of being open and curious about not just other people's worldview, mine. I think that was the thing that really hit me. That's like, if I don't acknowledge my own worldview and what that's kind of built on and predicated on, and with all the assumptions that come in there, then I'm never going to be open to anybody else's. So that, I mean, I just had a picture of you when you said about, you're starting a course and you're sitting in a room with a bunch of people that you've never met before. Yeah. And if you can be open and curious about the fact that they're all going to say something, they may say something really, really different, or some of it may be similar. Yeah. And if we can be open to that, then that in itself teaches that there is diversity. And you don't need to do, I mean, I'm not saying you don't need to do any more than that, but you need to do that before you can do all the rest. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I just love the way that you're saying that. I mean, because that's it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's a really great summary, Julie, of that approach. Really, it is. Because obviously I don't get into dialogue with other people. It's about yourself. Don't talk. I don't want to hear. Just think about yourself first. Then when you connect with difference or similarity as well, then you can understand some of the different why that there may be something in between the relationship. A good one is obviously communication styles, isn't it?
Yes.
What does it mean if I'm a bit more, if I don't make facial expressions, for example? That's your assumption. Or I'll make less eye contact. That's your assumption that somehow I'm being defensive, or it's based on assumption, isn't it?
Yes, and I guess that's where the curiosity comes in.
Curiosity, exactly.
Yeah.
So hopefully that model and the lower level model gives you that curiosity to go,
I think so.
This is me. I do it this way. I do it this way.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you so much. It's great.
Thanks, Julie. Jamie?
Hello.
Hi, Jamie.
Hi, so thank you very much. I'm really excited about you presenting here. And I'm seeing this not just from a counselor's lens. I've got my own private practice, but I'm seeing it also from a mental health educator's lens. I have also a business where I create trainings for organizations on different mental health topics. And I just see so much scope. I feel that the language and the model that you've created here can be translated to many different ways, and hopefully ultimately to all healthcare professions, so trainings for all nurses and doctors, and anybody who works in social care. I think ultimately this should be a fundamental foundational layer for all kind of education courses. Ultimately, is the ultimate goal, isn't it? But
Yes,
but now,
absolutely.
just wanted to say, that is where I'm seeing it from. That I just see so much more scope to take this forward. But I understand that this is the fundamental stage one. Is let's get it out to counselors. That's what it's been designed for, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad you said about the wide applicability. I actually say it's about not even about therapy. I think it's about primary school education,
Yes.
because
Yeah.
actually it's the relationship with your friends, with your family. Without that, and then it's about obviously repair. It's about
Completely.
repair.
Yeah. I agree, and I'm 100% ready for advocacy of
Oh,
this.
but
I'd love to help. I don't know, like in my role and how I can do that. I'm not a well-connected person. It sounds like you need some good connections initially to get this off the ground. So I wish you all the
It
best.
sounds like you've got some really good ideas. Anything, social media, just saying I'm using this here, anything that can talk to other people, anything like that.
Okay.
That is going to be the biggest barrier initially, is actually have we reached enough people, and we need other people to reach the people.
Yeah, it's the raising awareness, definitely, and I'll help in any way I can. So good luck with it.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie. Well, we're sort of nearing the end here. I don't know if there are anyone else wants to have a final. It has to be very, very brief. Or maybe we could pause here. What do you think?
Sorry, was that last bit, Eugene?
Maybe we could pause at this point.
Yeah, pause at this
yeah.
point. I could say one thing before
Yeah.
we end.
Yeah.
The resources, I've sent a link, I'll send it again in there. The resources are all available there on the website. And if you can also email for the resources, the models, so all the models and everything else, you can take it away and go and use it. If that's what you want to do. That's where I'll end it. Over to you, Eugene.
Okay, so all that's on the website.
Yeah, I'll put it in there on TADF UK.
Yeah. And so all of these links, everything, sort of basic ideas, I guess, and this video will be on the Barton website. There's a training resources page, so we'll include it into that. I'm keen to sort of maybe get social media involved. I'm not exactly sure how, but we can send out some posts relating to this on our Barton social media account as well. And yeah, interested in doing more, even if it's like taster sessions, things like that. Get people involved, because you've already got a ton of resources on the website anyway, so people to engage with. So it would be actually just sort of bringing people into the model in a basic way. So definitely, I'm very keen to continue this, continue to sort of promote, to let people know that this exists. And also the people who didn't attend, or actually those who did attend, we'll send you a link to the video, as well, when it's ready. Yeah, so thanks everyone. Just to thank everyone, thank you again, Mahmood, for presenting this model, and for those of you who have attended over your lunch break or wherever it's been going on for you. And we're going to pause now, and I think we're going to be around. Well, we both will be around for the next 10 minutes, 15 minutes perhaps, depends on who hangs around. Have a good rest of the day, and again, thanks for attending.
Thanks, everyone.
So we'll wait for a minute. Bye.
Bye, Joe.
So we'll wait for a minute or two just to see who's
Yeah.
still left after everyone has signed off.
Yeah. Yeah, let's let people go for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
It's what I usually do in training, but obviously we've got more people today, so we don't know. Yeah.
Yes, and some people,
We'll see if it works.
yeah, and some people just don't sign off either as well. So,
Yeah, exactly.
or they've gone off somewhere else. But yeah,
Shall we just start then? Someone want
yeah,
to start?
yeah.
If you want to have a one-to-one conversation, just email me. Obviously, we can't do it today, but just email me. We'll do something one-to-one. Yeah, but perhaps just anyone want to start and ask, basically.
I have one quick question, if I may.
Of course.
Thank you. So I'm currently studying psychotherapy, but I am actually working on a committee for an organization that I volunteer with, which is a global organization. And I'm currently working with people to, I guess, redesign our policies to ensure that we are more accessible, that we are breaking down systemic barriers. We do have a history of putting barriers in place for the global majority people. I would love to also use these resources in building some of those documents and some of those trainings. And I'm wondering if it would be okay to suggest you as a potential trainer. I can't guarantee that they'll say yes, but it is completely separate from the field of psychotherapy. Like it's a totally different realm. Is that something that you'd be comfortable with? Could I suggest that?
Yeah, of course you can suggest that. Yeah, absolutely. I work with lots of other people were here as well. Work with organisations that aren't therapists.
Okay.
So it's widely applicable. So really, just send us an email. And
Great, I'll follow up with an email. Great, thank you so
but I
much. I
also want to
appreciate
get to a place where people are able to just use it themselves as well, not
that.
needing me as the bottleneck either.
Okay.
So if you want to do something just to go through some of that, and there'll be
Great.
recordings available as well, sort of train the trainer type things.
I would love that. That would be amazing.
Is
So
that
just
Cam? Is
email.
it?
Yes, sorry, hi.
Okay.
I'm in the car park of school and
Yeah,
there's
that's
lots
all
of
right.
kids running around, so I can't go on video. But so do I just email you separately
Yeah.
about designing something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
No problem. Anyone else? Pauline, I'm just taking your name off the list on the list. I think you need to be on mute, I think. Sorry, you're on mute. You need to be on
Hi,
mute.
is that me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Hi. I was just thinking that it's the sense of us as a starting point, with us as a whole. I put in the chat the Walt Whitman
Yes, I saw that.
line from his poem, "I contain multitudes." It's understanding and accepting our whole, all the things that you've got in the Wicket model.
Yeah.
The multifaceted parts of ourselves at that wider intersectional level, and understanding and knowing enough of that. I think there's also something about accepting that the way that we're taught as therapists comes from a neurocentric, westernized viewpoint that is so embedded and embodied in everything that we learn.
Exactly.
In practice A, as you called it. Have I got that terminology? Practice A, and then everything in practice B is layered over the Eurocentric, westernized, almost colonialized, inferior, superior models that we've learned, which then separate us and have us fragmented in that way, where we don't have ourselves, as you say, as whole beings with all the different contextual aspects that we're made up. And it's trying to tie all of that in together, whilst understanding that basic core training from that Eurocentric model needs to change significantly if we start with all of us as multitudes and as whole people.
Yeah, that's a very good summary. I would say the Eurocentric model can stay. because we can apply different models and knowledge models onto it. I haven't thought that answer through yet properly, to be honest. But it's got its own frame of reference, isn't it? So, it's there. But I understand you're coming from that position of, yeah. That's why we want to center different knowledge bases. That's the way, I think. Because actually we derive our truth from a knowledge base. It might not be consciously understood what that is. For most people, it isn't. It hasn't been for me for a long time. Yeah. Thanks for the summary. Is there anything else you want to ask, or is that mainly it?
No, it's
Comment?
just, as you say, the different frames of references that we're all bringing from different wider perspectives. I suppose, as well as being a psychotherapist of a 30 plus years standing, I've also got a background in equality, EDI, I suppose we call it now. And it's almost a marriage of the two that has certainly led me to the way that I practice. That takes into account a lot of thinking that you've mentioned today, and also with me as I live and work in Scotland, although I'm originally from London, so I'm the other in the room, and that most of my client base are white mainstream people not of color.
Yeah. It's Pauline. Is that okay for now, and then go into someone else? Thanks for that. Anyone else? Mark has just gone. Stuart?
Hi, Mahmood, thanks. I guess without wanting to put you or Eugene representing Barton on the spot today, you can kind of receive this as a very generalized question, which is around the notion of your appetite, capacity, and resourcing in the context of initiating communities of practice.
Because around this area.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, not necessarily your area alone. We're all living in different areas, right?
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be fair to have everybody come to your neighborhood.
Okay. So I'm thinking about online. My brain goes to online.
It's fine. You're just getting introduced to my very lateral sense of humor. Now, of course, I do mean not specifically geographically in your neighborhood, but in the wider sense, to just consider the prospect of seeding, initiating, catalyzing communities of practice, because the activist in me and the unintegrated rebellious part of me is not really necessarily personally anyway interested or concerned to gain the in inverted commas approval of governance bodies. I'm very much of the kind of activist and DIY mindset. If there's a sufficient number of people, as has been evidenced by the initial number of folk who are on this call, that feel encouraged, inspired, energized by the models you so very clearly articulated and expressed, maybe part of another step from that initial inspiration and impetus is to catalyze some practical activity, whereby we as a community of professionals just get on with this.
Yeah.
So that's one strand, and this is more of a proposition than a question seeking an answer
no,
here.
It's like something important. That's the next stage, probably. This is now. Yeah, we need to do that.
But then there's another kind of very, at least from my POV, practical, not thought through, but a practical suggestion, which might be something along the lines of a summer school, which has several other organizations in the field contributing to, partnering with, to enable it to happen. So I just wanted to float that as something that could be explored offline subsequently.
Yeah,
potentially.
These are definitely the right things to talk about, to think about. I'm not sure where it's going to go, but I do want someone other than a few people to take this over, really. We need organizations, we need other communities, we need conference, events. I don't know, whatever it is to go, actually, this is serious. We need to seriously change this. Otherwise, my voice, a couple of voices, Sam's here as well, were not enough to do this. Personally, I'm getting tired as well as more time goes past on it. So I'm not trying to, say you should do it, but I'm just saying, yeah, I agree with what you're saying. But I think then the next thing is how do we do exactly what you're saying? Because I think exactly those 2 points are exactly what I want to do. So now who's going to come forward to do those points? And I'd love for that to happen, but I'd love for someone to say, I'm going to set up a community of practice. I'm going to do this. I'm going to socialize it. I'm going to bring it into a group. This is exactly what you're saying. At the moment, all I've said in my mind is that the first phase is this is sort of almost at the ending point now with today's event, almost like socialize to as many people as possible. Then the next phase is, people seem to like it. That was the first tick in the box. That's the most important tick of the box. Then now, how do we mobilize it and make it happen? Because it's actually an easy solution.
Well, I'm very interested in pursuing that question with you subsequently.
Yeah, please email me as well, just to keep in touch.
Okay, all good.
Thanks,
Thank you
Jim.
again, Mahmood. Thank you, Eugene.
You're welcome. Thanks. Anyone else?
Yeah.
I think most people are on. A bit Mark, I saw, but let's see. I think that's probably going to be it now, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Brilliant. Thanks for that time as well, Eugene, on that. But again, just email, keep contact, see where we go. Follow up to this. Obviously, I'll be talking to you as well, Eugene. What do we do? Type thing.
Yeah, let's set up a time.
What are the ideas? Ideas are needed. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm definitely up for doing more. And yes, we'll meet. We'll find a time to meet. What we'll do now is a sign off because I've got a client in a little bit. So
yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Some work. We'll say goodbye to everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well done, Roland.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. Hi. Thanks.
Sola, hello. Good to see you. All right. Okay, I'm going to press the button. Oh, hang on. I need to make sure I've saved everything. So I'll probably go for a little bit longer while I press some buttons.
Yeah.
Anyway,
all right. Thanks, Eugene, for setting that up as well. I know it's a bit of effort to that as well. Thanks.
My pleasure.